Hey, everybody! It's episode 51 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast, talking
Hey,
about...
Devin.
Hey, Victoria.
The Ties That Bind, Part 11.
And...
And The Ties That Bind, Part 12.
Yeah!
Written by Mr. Paul
McCusker! Yes, the fourth and third to last episodes of this album, because this one has 2 extra episodes, because they couldn't fit it all into 12 episodes, and I think we can see why by this point, honestly. What happens in this episode, Victoria?
So in this episode, Eugene goes to Connie because he needs advice about being a better father. Olivia has changed her ideals on what a family should be due to her Room of Consequence adventure, which we never got to hear. And she tells her parents that they should try and figure out something to do to celebrate families, which is probably what's on the cover of the album. Meanwhile, Vance is spreading rumors about Buck being the one that started the fire that burned Wooton's house down. And Wooton approaches Eugene about help in finding the perilous pen. And Whit is still in the hospital, so he goes and decides to meet Randall, Miss Adelaide's brother, and talk to him. And we also find out from Detective Pullhouse, there is no perilous pen!
Wiggity what?
What? That just makes things 10 more times confusing.
10 more times?
10. So,
is that
first
the
off,
end of what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
First off, I just want to say I am so sick of Miss Adelaide.
It's funny, okay, because I was listening to album 57 a couple weeks ago, right? So when I listened to Repent After Me, and she's like, oh, being all sweet and stuff, and helping out with the play, and was like...
I know. And she's like, we know your secrets. We know how shifty you are, you evil temptress. Like, what is your problems? And it's like, I am so sick of her. Like, she was already annoying me a lot, and it just elevated by the fact that she just, like, debated Whit into a coma or something like that. And, like, then I'm thinking, like, oh my gosh, can she get any worse? And it's like, I should not have asked myself that, because there's yet another scene in this episode where she's just like, oh, I got your essays back, children, and she like gives them to him, and she's just like, you all did so good. She's like, Emily, Matthew, and they're like, yes, and she's like, you fail, and then she like gives them back their essays and stuff, and they're just like, what the heck? And then Miss Adelaide's just like, Matthew, I thought you were smart, but you're actually really dumb, and Matthew's just like, what the heck? And then she just walks away. And she's like, by the way, I want you all to write, like, new essays about all these other things. And at the point when I was listening to this episode for the first time, I just, like, messaged Devin because I was, like, just so done with all Miss Adelaide's crap. Like, you don't even know.
Well, and I don't, because your message was, what does Miss Adelaide teach? And I said,
yeah,
English,
but that was,
and
like,
you said,
caps, and... I, like, could not remember what she taught. I thought she taught, like, social studies or something like that. Or, like, I couldn't remember if she only taught drama. I was thinking, like, I think she teaches other things. But seriously, if she only teaches drama, I'm just going to be so mad. Because it's just like, okay, drama class today. Miss Adelaide, our production is going to be tomorrow night. We haven't got to practice at all. Oh, that's interesting. I want you to write these essays about me, about marriage. So, like, have fun with that, kids. I'll see you at the production tomorrow night. You better not mess up. And then she just, like, walks out of the class. Like, she drops the mic and she walks out. And all the kids are just like, I hate drama class. And... Miss Adelaide.
You know, I mean, if she was simply, you know, a very vocal and active supporter of, you know, gay rights and stuff like that.
Yeah, like, I wouldn't be annoyed if she was just like she's entitled to her own ideas and stuff like that.
Exactly, but she is openly and unashamedly not only basing marks for Matthew and Emily,
forcing everything on everyone.
She's not allowing them to have their own opinion and decreasing their own school marks based on that, not based on the writing. But she is also in full support of attacking Wit's End for expressing their ideas.
Yeah, she's like the opposing mob boss to Wit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll get to all that.
But I'm right though, aren't
yes.
I? Like,
yes, you are.
and it's annoying me so much. I'm like, oh, I hope that she ends up in jail by the end of this album. I don't know how, but I hope she just like leaves and she does not come back.
I'm sure Full House could figure out some trumped up charge.
I bet she is actually going to end up in trouble with the authorities or something, because she was totally involved with what happened to Wooton, most likely.
If it can be proved or anything like that.
If it can be proved, she is going to end up in lots of trouble with the authorities, and I hope she gets detention or something like that. Or worse, goes to jail. Like.
Anyways, to the episode. So we start out with a very long Previously On, which covered literally every single plot line in this entire album. And I was like, oh, wow. We must be getting close to the end if they're going to pull out all the stops. It was like a 2.5 minute long Previously
There's nothing about Jules in this episode. I think that's the only thing they didn't cover in this one.
So we start off with the Parkers all talking together. And I thought it was really interesting. Camilla acknowledged that a lot of her friends, not just like one or two of her friends, but a lot of her friends come from same-sex marriage households at school. I really wasn't
like parents who are divorced.
Well, she said 2 moms or 2 dads. She said that. I'm quite pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, she said just 1 mom or just 1 dad was abnormal. So
I can kind of relate to what Camilla was talking about in this part, because I remember like grade 6 or 7 or something like that. I had some friends, and in those couple of years, they like tons of my friends' parents got divorced. So I was just kind of sitting there, and then I like mentioned my parents or something like that, and then they'd be like, oh, your parents aren't divorced or something like that. Because, I don't know, I guess, because we always have 2 cars at my house, like my dad's car and then my mom's car, and I'd always say like,
back then.
Well, like we sometimes did. I guess like this also happened to me in grade 5, kind of like
we didn't have 2 cars back then, is what I'm saying.
I'm like, oh, my mom's working, so my dad's picking me up or something like that, and I'd say kind of things like that, and I guess people thought that my parents were divorced in grade 5 for a little bit, like some of the students in my class. But I'm like, oh no, they're not. But by the time grade 6 and 7 rolled around, like everyone's parents were divorced and stuff, basically, that I knew, except for like some people. And I'm just thinking like, oh man, now I feel weird that my parents aren't divorced. I remember thinking that at one point. I'm like, wait, no, it's a good thing that my parents are not divorced. That's not a weird thing. I'm very thankful.
Well, weird and good aren't mutually exclusive necessarily. I mean, I'm not saying that it is weird, but I'm saying things can be weird and good. Yeah. I mean, weird means atypical, and if the majority of parents were divorced, then being still together would be weird, technically. But, yeah, your point stands. But, yeah, what I mean is, like, from what she said, there's no way that she could have just been talking about divorce. That's what surprised me, because she said it seemed weird that she had just 1 mom or just 1 dad, which can only refer to people who have more than 1 mom or more than 1 dad. So I was really surprised.
Or maybe like step parents too.
Well, that's not more than 1 mom or more than 1 dad, though.
Technically, it is.
No. Well, it's a valid point. I'll give you that. Didn't think of that. Fair point.
Thank you.
Okay, and guess we're skipping the Room of Consequence adventure, which Victoria was very angry about.
Oh, I was so angry.
Found out. So, to be fair, I mean,
I messaged Devin about that one too. I was just like, I just sent him like a full caps, just what? And then I was just like, what? I just kept on repeating the word, and I was like, what? And then I'm just like, what are they doing? I'm like, are you listening to the episode? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, where are you? 19 minutes in. Okay, I'm like 3 minutes in. What the heck are they doing? Why did they skip the Room of Consequence adventure? Like, I think that they're gonna more or less explain what she saw in it in like an episode or so.
They definitely will. But, I mean,
yeah.
While I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get to experience it in person, I had a feeling that we were going to skip over it based on one of the something implied from one of the comments that we got on a previous episode. And I mean, especially because the thing I found really interesting about it is the words that Olivia used about it, about not being able to put into words and such, were almost identical to Connie's description of her Inspiration Station adventure. Did you notice that?
Mm-mm.
The way she was like, I can't talk about it because it was so like eye-opening, incredible that I don't know how to put it into words yet. And it was basically the same way Connie described that.
In the case of Connie in... Wait, did you say Connie in the Inspiration Station?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. In the case of that, it was like negative, kind of, because it was ruining Connie's life.
That's true.
But in the case of this, it's good.
Although Connie didn't see it as negative, to be fair.
Yeah, at the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was overall negative, whereas this with Olivia is an overall positive because the Room of Consequence is amazing.
And I'm 100%...
It's my favorite invention at Wits End. I'm
96% certain that we'll still get an explanation to some degree of what went on in there.
Yeah, I think we will too.
I'm really glad that Eugene's lying skills are still as awful as effort, and it's really sweet to see him get this flustered over protecting Buck.
I know, like, this is what we wanted. This is what we wanted.
It is exactly. This is like...
But, like, what I don't comprehend is Focus and, like, AIOO did not want to have Eugene and Katrina have a kid because...
It would change Eugene.
It would change Eugene.
Well,
and he'd have
there's a couple explanations
things. But wait,
that.
Dev.
Okay, sorry.
But, like, I think one of the reasons Devin was kind of opposed to the idea that they would adopt Buck, and Devin didn't really think it would happen, was because it would still have the same effect, which I agreed with him, so I hoped that they would adopt Buck, but I didn't actually think it would happen. But, like, here we are, and, like, the same thing is happening. I know it's to a lesser extent than what it would if they were actually raising a kid, but, like, instead of just raising a kid and having to deal with, like, screaming and, like, oh, I want this from a toy shop or something like that. It's like, I want candy or something. It's like you have to deal with teenage angst. So, like, that's
super extreme
not
teenage angst.
Easy either. And it's just, like, it's not just any angst. It's, like, Southern Buck angst, which is, like... the angstiest of the angst in
it's not
all of
so
the
much
teenage
that, but
characters in the show at the moment.
I grew up in a crime-filled carnival committing terrible acts and then went to juvenile detention before being adopted. Even I know he's still not technically adopted by them, but...
He should be. He is. Let's just say he is.
Yeah. But anyways, my point is, yeah, it was really sweet to see Eugene getting so flustered to pull house over it. It's funny, Jumbo Fork / Macy on Tumblr this last week, she posted, because Pull House is played by Phil Proctor, who is also Leonard Meltzner, and saying
what?
Funny it would be if Eugene noticed that Pull House had the same voice as his dad, and I was like, imagine Pull House's immense internal conflict as he realizes that as he tries to what's the word I'm looking for? He's trying to synthesize his suspicions of Buck and the fact that Buck is now his weird sort of double adopted grandson. And
what? They sound nothing alike.
Well, that's because Leonard Meltzner has a British Australian accent.
But isn't the actor actually British though?
I don't know.
I thought he actually was. It's the same person?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, he's played a number of other people. I'll bring it up in the background while you talk about something.
I thought that we didn't get any more Leonard stuff because, even, no more visits or anything because they couldn't get the actor. If they've had the actor the whole time, where is Leonard? It's gonna be the new Hand Up. We need Leonard to come back because he's Pull House, so he's already in the studio, so they have no excuse. They should pull a Novacom, and then even though it'll make absolutely no sense, in the last minute of Ties That Bind, there is a message left on the answering machine while Buck and Katrina and Eugene go out for ice cream because they're a happy family. They leave, and then the door shuts, and then the answering machine goes off, and it's a message from Leonard. And it won't make any sense, but it will make me happy.
Phil Proctor has played Calaphas, Deacon Carver, Don Polhouse, Don Winters, Leonard Corelli, Leonard Meltzner, Malchus, Principal Spence, and Squanto.
He plays a lot of characters with the same name.
Yes.
They're like, oh, we named someone Leonard.
Well, there's 2 Dons and 2 Leonards.
Let's bring him in. We named someone Don. Let's bring him in.
That's exactly how it works. Anyways, back to the episode. My notes. Okay. So my prediction about Randall was partially right then. Whit goes to meet with Miss Adelaide's brother, but he does it intentionally, not by accident, like I'd guessed, which I suppose that my idea of what was going to happen was a bit cliche, so that's fair. I was really surprised to find out that Miss Adelaide was married, especially since she goes by Miss Adelaide. I wonder if that's because maybe it's a same-sex marriage and she's mostly hidden it because she's afraid of judgment, small town, homophobic people.
Oh, I like that theory. That theory.
Which seems fairly probable. Then again, she's very vocal about things and her stance on it. So it really doesn't seem like she would hide something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, if she was like, oh no, they'll judge me if they find out that I'm married to a woman, then she wouldn't be standing up on soapboxes berating the entire town over these issues and stuff like that, right?
I bet she actually does carry a box of soap with her around in her purse.
Anyways, even though Randall isn't someone that we know, I was really surprised that it was someone that Whit already knew, even if he, forgot about him. I'm really not sure what to make about Randall. I'll kind of touch on it a bit at the end, but
really, it's another case like
I really hope we get
Monica.
more explanation.
What's Monica's
later.
brother's name?
Yeah, I was about to say that because Duncan Mathis.
Duncan. Mathis. I can't talk.
Yeah,
it's another case like that because I really wish there was more stuff with Duncan in Novacom, but I think they did pretty good at getting everything out in a short amount of time. But there's so much stuff about Randall which they didn't explain. They're like, they kind of hinted at things, but they never clarified anything.
I really hope that they explain more stuff. And see, like I predicted, it would be like Duncan Mathis and Monica Stone, and I was exactly right, all the way down to the almost exact line where Randall says, "My sister," what do you say? No.
It was like, it's my problem, not yours.
Said, "My sister's made made me the poster child for her various campaigns," and that was like. That the place that I learned the phrase poster child from was from, Duncan and Monica and Jason's conversations. So it was like, that's exactly what.
And it's like another Whittaker talking to the person. Yeah.
So, yeah, and I'll touch on the end about what my guess is about that, because I was like, okay, guess that's not getting explained in this episode. And I really hope they talk more about Randall. And, well, I mean, they have to at least some, because they need to explain how Miss Adelaide got the idea that Whit is connected to this. But,
I don't know, maybe it's like, because Randall used to be in Whit's classes, so maybe Randall came home with something and he got like they pulled a tiny camel with Randall kind of, and he didn't understand the context completely of something Whit said. So then he took it as in like, God is against blah blah blah, which he didn't like. He pulled a fan reaction to castles and cauldrons, so he decided to do like the exact opposite, basically. And my personal guess is I think that Randall changed his gender or something like that. That's what I was rolling with.
I think he's trans, or that he thought he was trans. Anyways, yeah, I'll touch on that at the end.
Like, that was my theory, because they said her brother, and Whit clarified he was a young boy, so I'm like, oh, I bet he changed his gender or something, because he's like, look at me and look at how different I look and stuff. Yeah, and I'm like, he's totally
okay, I'll just skip to that point in my notes then. Where's it? Yeah. I really hope we find more about Randall. So it's not clarified any more than what we heard, if it isn't clarified any more than what we heard, then based on what he said, and this is kind of what I guessed too beforehand a little bit. I guessed it was resulted from a hate crime, based on being trans or gay or something like that. But he said that he was full of things that were trying to kill him. So my guess is that he's trans and that he had some kind of terrible reaction while he was transitioning to the hormones or to reassignment surgery or something like that. Some kind of terrible medical reaction, because he's talking about things. So like if he's allergic to the hormones that he was on or something like that while he was going through HRT. And that's what is causing him to be so sick. That could be supported by the fact that he changed his name. But the confusing thing is he said that he's going by Randall now. And that's always been his middle name.
Really understand
and that's
that.
Always been his middle name, which is, Randall as a male name. I don't think that's a unisex name at all. But I guess it kind of makes sense because he talks about how now he's like decided to go back to what Wit taught him and stuff like that. So it could kind of make sense that he was Bobby and then he changed his name and then he decided that he wasn't. So yeah, what I think is he was assigned male at birth, and then at some point he, I guess, at least believed himself to be a trans woman, and then, started transitioning. Had some kind of terrible medical reaction to it that put him in the hospital and that he's on the verge of death. And he decided that he was wrong about his trans identification. And so now he is re-identifying as male again, changed his name back to Randall this time instead of Bobby. And that's why he's identifying as a male now and was at birth, because he changed and then decided that he wasn't trans after all and went back to male. Because he was talking about, he said I'm going back to the way things were and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so I hope they elaborate, but based on what we've heard so far, that's what I think.
Something I've learned from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Bobby is a both sex name.
Exactly.
So it's probably he just kept his name Bobby and then he decided I don't like being this anymore. So then he changed his name. So he's called by his middle name. That's what I think. I think he had both names. And then when he decided he wanted to change, he decided he didn't want to be Bobby anymore. So he started going by his middle name. That's
really good because most trans people, when they change their name, they will, pick something that's really close. They'll, pick the most closest masculine or feminine form of what their name already is. And so if you have a unisex name, which Bobby can be, if you kept that and then went back and because of the experience is no, I don't even want to go back to Bobby's a male name, I'm going to go to Randall instead to distance myself from what happened. That's really good. Thank you. I think that based on the evidence we have so far, that's probably the most likely explanation.
Okay, I am so glad that you thought that he changed his gender or something like that, because I was thinking that and then I'm just I don't know that much about these things. I'm probably completely wrong. So I'm very glad that you agree with me on that one.
Yeah.
I didn't know how he was quote unquote killing himself, but your explanation makes sense.
Yeah, that's my guess. And the only thing I don't get about that then is what that has to do with how, wit and general old-timey thinking, as Miss Adelaide put it, archaic
What do you think about my theory, though?
That is an idea. My other possible thought was that Miss Adelaide believes that the reason that Randall had such a severe reaction to his transition surgery or whatever caused it, to the hormones, what have you, is the fact that there's not enough medical research done to make these things safe, because people don't put enough research into it because of, people trying to say that it's wrong or that we shouldn't invest time and money into stuff like that.
Yeah,
and that's why it was
more of overall people.
Yeah, because of that, that's why the surgery was so dangerous, kind of thing. So but your idea is also another possibility, and I'm sure Miss Adelaide will tell us.
Yeah, if Miss Adelaide keeps on carrying on, if she never explains, which I am pretty certain she will, if she carries on more about overall people, I'd go with your theory. If she if she keeps on carrying on, but she more centers on wit specifically without seeming like it's overall people in general, then I'm personally going to go with my theory.
It's a good idea. Now we're taking a long time, but there's a lot to talk about in this one.
There is a lot to talk about in this episode.
To come back to earlier in the episode, but still on the topic of gender. So yeah, I am all for writing essays examining gender issues and constructs and stuff like that. But As Jennifer said in a comment on one of our videos a ways back, you can't mark the opinions on an opinion essay. You can't let personal bias affect how you mark as a teacher. I mean, this much is obvious, and it was obvious that Miss Adelaide was gonna mark them on their opinions, but I think it still bears pointing out, definitely.
Yeah.
So we moved to some other plot points around. Mrs. Kramer was dancing in the street while Wooton's house burned. Maybe she did it in an Emperor Nero kind of way, fiddling while Rome burns. Either way, she
honestly,
just dropped
if she
several
did it,
points.
she would have appeared in the album before now.
No, I'm not. I mean, I don't seriously think she did it.
Yeah,
obviously.
I know.
But either way, you know, she just dropped several points in my book. I really like Mrs. Kramer, but that's just cruel.
Understand that line until you brought it up again. I didn't understand it in context. I thought it meant like she was dancing to get people's attention so the fire trucks would come.
No, dancing with joy because she doesn't like
I just got that now. That is messed up.
I know.
Like, what the heck?
That's really cruel.
And like, I know that she's supposed to be like senile and mean, and that's how they write her, and she's like a comedic character and stuff, and that's why people tend to like her because she's kind of like dark sense of humor-ish.
But that's just really cruel.
Yeah, that's like really, really dark. And also, another thing that really bothers me about Mrs. Kramer, I understand that she's supposed to be like old and senile and stuff like that, and that's why she doesn't like people like Wooton, but Wooton has never done anything bad to her before.
Some people
and I know
like
that she takes everything he does wrong, but like there's a difference between not liking someone because you take things the wrong way and dancing in the streets as they're one of the things that was most important to them. Like, he had all his things in that. Like,
granted, she doesn't necessarily know how important his house is to him, but still, yeah, it's me.
But like, what the heck? Even if you don't like your neighbor, you wouldn't just do that. You would try and like do something to help.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like, there might be some people who would be like, oh, I hate that person. Their house is burning down, like, good, or something like that. But, like, to dance in the streets as every single possession that they ever owned burns. What the heck?
Yeah. Man, we have to hurry through this. I still have my whole gender rant to go. Wow, Vance is very good at sowing ideas in people's head. It really reminded me of the 10th Doctor at the end of the Christmas Invasion with Harriet Jones and the, don't you think she looks tired? That's what I thought of when he was like starting to sow things about Buck burning down Wooton's house.
To be fair, it's not very hard to implant an idea in Jay's head.
No, that is very true. And speaking of Jay, I was laughing really hard when he was bragging about you know, how he's getting paid to be in a TV show and stuff. I'm like, I can't wait for him to get his glorious residual check for like a whopping 6 cents. I mean, I guess that probably applies more to like commercials and stuff like that than TV shows, but still.
I just want to imagine, I know this is going to sound kind of messed up because Jay's my favorite character and I like when good things happen to him. I want him to be in one of the houses or something like that while the zombies are attacking, and he has like, and there's like records on the wall or something like that because he's like in a music shop and they happen to be Elvis records, and just like the zombies come in and they just smash them, and then Jay just like, what?
It's gonna melt down. I mean, obviously they wouldn't be real records, but still, yeah.
But like, and then he just like nopes off the set and he just like quits and he just walks right out. Like, how great would that be? And that would be spontaneous for you. I love how he's practicing his spontaneity, and he's like the most spontaneous character in the whole series. It's like, dude, you do not need to practice this.
It's like Connie when she talks to Jeff, she's like, don't you want to give me a little hint to heighten my curiosity? And I was like, Connie, the world cannot handle your curiosity at any more heightened of a level. That line, that was like the funniest line in all of life expectancy to me. Anyways, Full House, like you mentioned before, he says that the pen doesn't exist, and everyone's like, and then it cuts scenes, and immediately I was like, I don't believe Full House that the pen doesn't exist, but if it's true, it would be one heck of a plot twist. What I was guessing and was correct about was that what he meant was that it's not one person, but a whole bunch of people.
That's what I thought he meant.
And then that's what it turned out that he meant.
No, actually, maybe I was just in the what stage and I never got past that. To me, it's going to be like, I still think there's a perilous pen, kind of. But it would be like...
it doesn't change things that much. There's still someone in Odyssey who's informing on Wooton. The difference is that doesn't have to be a person who travels enough and has enough money and time to be the perilous pen all over.
What I mean by I still think there's a perilous pen, kind of, like I kind of think it, is I have two theories. One theory is, say it is in fact Hadley who is the perilous pen. There are people who send him things and information about different things, and then he's the one who uploads it, but he has lots of contacts who find out things and then they tell him and then he posts it online.
Yeah.
Or
like
my second
swingers
theory,
or slingers or strippers or something like that.
Or my second theory is like it is just a network of people and then they all just upload it to one site. Like Tumblr when they find out spoilers about like a TV show or something like that. Okay. Unless, what if the perilous pen, what if he pulls an Alex Hirsch and the perilous pen is Wooton? Can you imagine that?
No, I honestly can't.
Because for those of you who don't know, Alex Hirsch, the creator of Gravity Falls, there was a major leak about a plot twist in the series, and then no one knew where it came from. And then Alex Hirsch got really angry when he saw that it was leaked, and he like made angry tweets and then he deleted them. And then like months, like half a year later, something like that, the episode came out and it verified the leak. And then in the last minute of the episode, it said, actually, this thing is the complete opposite to what you think it is. And then a couple weeks after that, Alex Hirsch posted a tweet and it was step 1, how to fool your fan base. And it's like, step 1, post a leak that isn't true. Step 2, put angry tweets online and then delete them. It's like step 3, sit back and watch the world burn and stuff like that.
It was masterful.
It was so amazing, but we were all so mad at him. Like, he is a genius, but yeah.
I'm telling you, he's Andrew Hussey, AH. The initials.
He is crazy.
Anyways, I'm
the one who told you that in the first place.
Yes. But then I thought of it later after I'd forgotten that, and then I was like, oh yeah, you said that too. So anyways, I need to squish through my whole rant now because we're going a little long right now. Lots to say.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But I'm actually commenting on things this time.
Yes, which is good.
Nice.
Your comments are relevant, so that's important. Here comes Devin being controversial and against the grain because he says, I'm going to have to agree with Miss Adelaide about what she said about computers and gender being in the software. In fact, I think that what she said can only work in a spiritual and possibly only Christian perspective, not in a secular one. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on my thoughts about being transgender right now. I'm still learning and adjusting my way through the facts on that and my specific thoughts, so making any declarative statements to that end right now would be unwise, I think. However, I will say briefly at this moment that I think that being transgender is something that can validly fit into a Christian worldview, and possibly only into a Christian worldview. But that's beside the point. My point here, though, is that no matter what you believe about that, I think that a Christian would have to accept what Miss Adelaide says here specifically about gender being something in the software, not in the hardware. Because the way that I see it, if you believe that God created man as male and female with a distinct gender binary, 2 genders, then you have to believe that gender is an aspect of the soul, spiritually, not of the physical body and your genetics. And to explain that, what I mean is that when God creates our immortal souls with all the personality traits and quirks that comprise it, that gender is an aspect of this, not an aspect of how our genes combine and, what we have in our pants. And this is why I think that. Intersexuality is a medical aspect, I'm not sure if condition is the right word, that describes about 4% of people in the population, which is about the same percentage as the number of redheads out there. So it's
intersex, that's when you have both?
Yeah, it's almost. Yeah, it affects quite a few people. Like I said, it's about the same percentage as the number of redheads out there. So being intersex isn't about sexual orientation, but it means that biologically you don't fit into the gender binary as distinctly male or distinctly female, the way that we define them. Specifically, it means that your 23 chromosomes are something that that your 23rd chromosomes are something other than X and X or X and Y, which would make you female or male specifically. So one example would be some people have an X and a Y chromosome. So that doesn't fit into either thing. And which means also that that individual's genitalia don't fit into our traditional strict definitions of a penis or a vagina either by extension. So it's, what gender are they? Then those people, when right after they're born, are often given surgery at birth to correct their body so that it matches either one gender or the other. And it's honestly extremely arbitrary how they decide which gender they want to correct your body to look like. So if we believe that God created a strict gender binary, then what gender are these people? If we believe that gender is an inherent property of our body physically, then there's no way we can answer that question, which is one of the reasons that I believe that gender is a property of our souls spiritually and not just of our body. So in that respect, I do agree with Miss Adelaide that gender is in our software, not in our hardware. And like I said, these are all things that I'm still learning more about. And so, I may change my mind at some point, but at this point in time, that is what I think. So, and that is why. So, you can think whatever you want, but I just wanted to point that out.
When you said, I agree with Miss Adelaide, and you started that off, I almost said, what? Because I thought you were saying, I agree with her in general or something like that.
No, that's why I was laughing before when you were getting so mad at Miss Adelaide, because I knew that rant was coming, and I knew that was the first sentence of my rant, and so that's why I thought it was funny.
I held myself back. I didn't say anything.
Yeah. So, do you have anything to comment on that, or? I mean, I don't expect you to have anything.
No, because I don't really know anything about... I know less than you do, so it wouldn't be right for me to comment.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect you to have anything to say immediately after I, said that whole spiel.
What else happened in this episode that we can talk about? Oh, do you think what I said before, the stuff that Olivia was talking about doing all this stuff with her family, is in fact the stuff on the cover?
Oh, yeah. I laughed when you said that because you're like, they're talking about, stuff to show what the true meaning of family is. Like, maybe that's what's happening on the cover. You said that in the description. I was laughing at the idea. They're like brainstorming what activities can show the true meaning of what family is. A tug of war, obviously. I'm glad that Olivia got so much out of her Room of Consequence adventure.
No, but I think they're going to do other things. I think it's going to be like a family games day.
that is a good point. I've been wondering what this entire time I've been kind of just guessing that the cover is one of those covers where it's not depicting a specific scene, but it's more symbolic of the tug of war between worldviews, even though we have the Parkers and the Wits End crew on both sides of the rope. So I haven't really known what to think about the cover yet. So
it means either way, we're going to win this.
Or lose this, either way. But no, that is a really good idea. Honestly, that's probably it.
Honestly, I think I always thought that they were doing a game day on the cover, and they just happened to be doing tug of war at the moment that the picture was taken.
At the moment that John Campbell snapped a picture for the
At the
cover.
moment John Campbell paid Chris to sneak in the bushes of the Parker household,
or
take
Jay.
a picture, and then run back to...
You mean Wits End?
Yeah. Oh, I thought that was at their house.
No, they're standing in front of Wits End.
Wait, let me see the cover
It's
again.
the front porch of Wits End is behind them.
Oh, I always thought that was... Well, you can't see it really at all.
Fairly distinctive. Anyways, speaking of Wit's End, it's being repainted by Buck. And I really love the idea that girls are actually lining up to bring Buck drinks.
I want them to all bring him lemonade. Like,
I
people walk up to Buck, and then they're like, they walk up to Eugene because they don't want to ask Buck, and they're just like, Eugene, what kind of drink does Buck like? Or either that, or they don't ask Eugene at all, but they remember seeing Buck when he first appeared in Odyssey, and how, like, he kept on drinking lemonade repeatedly, so they're like, oh man, he must really like lemonade, so then they all bring Buck lemonade.
I couldn't when I made a note about it, I couldn't decide which joke I liked more, the fact that Buck was drowning in lemonade or that all the girls were bringing the milkshake to his yard. Because it didn't mention what kind of drink they were bringing, so I was like, I don't know which joke I should make.
Oh my gosh.
But as soon as I was like, I can't not use that. That's too good. I felt like the nostalgia critic. I'm like, I better just make both.
The Sinister Six-Wheelers. I watched that review again yesterday.
I couldn't pass up the chance to make a joke. Yeah, all the girls bring the milkshake to Buck's yard.
I'm gonna give you a point for that one. That one's pretty good.
Thank you. I was very proud.
It's terrible, but it's pretty good. So I'm gonna give you. I'm not giving you a prediction point because I'm still winning on that, but
fair enough. Eugene.
But I do think Jay is gonna quit the thing, or either that, or he is going to film it, and then he's ultimately going to regret filming it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Last point about this episode. Eugene bemoaning parenting difficulties. There's nothing in this series that melts me like Eugene being a dad. Oh.
I don't know about you, but I think Eugene has the most interesting relationships with people out of all the characters.
I think he's the most developed and interesting character on Adventures in Odyssey, personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I think I agree with you on that one, because he's the one, like, you could probably talk about the longest. Or
and that's going to be one of our discussion episodes one day, actually, sort of related to that, so we won't get into that now, but because we have been recording for a long time, and we need to sum up this episode.
Yeah.
We don't have to rate it, actually. Can I just
say that my two bro TPs in Adventures in Odyssey are, of course, Jared and Dwayne. And then the other one is Eugene and Connie. Because, like, everything about Eugene and Connie's relationship is perfect.
True.
Just, like, from all the arguing in all the old albums to, like, how they've matured as Eugene became, like, a Christian and stuff. They still argue. They still have their moments. I still wish that they had more argumentative moments in the new series. But just, like, the way that that Eugene can, like, come to wit's end, and, like, he can lean on Connie to help him with, like, this, because, like, think about it. Eugene, like, he had an adoptive father, but I don't really think he spent that much time with his adoptive family. But, like, he never had a father growing up. Connie didn't really have a father either, but she'd have a better idea of what it's like to have a father than Eugene, which is really saying something, because Connie's father is Bill. But, like, Eugene never really had that loving parental kind of thing, but Connie did with her mom. So Eugene goes to Connie, and he's just like, well, like, obviously for family advice, I don't really think he's going to go to Whit, because Whit doesn't have the best family connections, no offense.
Well, Whit is good at giving other people
like, he's good at giving advice, but personal advice?
Yeah, but this isn't personal.
Yeah, I know. But I guess Whit was in the hospital, so it doesn't matter anyway. Sorry.
No, I'm just laughing at you trying to backtrack to justify what you're saying. I'm
sorry. Yeah, you're right. Anyway, so I don't even know where I get half the things I say.
I don't know. I just open my mouth and it all comes out, and then people watch it on YouTube for some reason.
Yeah. Why do you guys like us? I don't know.
Anyways.
So, like, Eugene leans on Connie for support, and then Connie, like, helps him deal with all this stuff, and it's just like, oh, you guys are so great. I don't ship Connie and Eugene in any capacity, but they are my bro TP because they are amazing together. They are so great. So, yeah. Anything you want to say?
I don't think so. There was a lot going on in this episode, obviously, and we talked a lot about a lot of it. A lot, especially Randall was a huge thing, and then I guess Miss Adelaide, what she said, it wasn't necessarily a huge thing. I just made a huge thing out of it because I needed a lot of time to explain being intersex and stuff like that for people who don't know. But yeah, lots of Buck and Jane stuff, lots of stuff with Randall, and it was really good. And I really want to find out how this all ends now. And now I can listen to part 12 now that we've recorded this review. And then obviously we'll rate them after we finish part 12, so we don't need to do that right now. So I think that's everything, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So let's turn you over to second half of this episode.
Buck's good too. Milkshakes too. Woo!
We are back. Second half of episode 51 now, talking about The Ties That Bind, part 12, episode 762 of Adventures in Odyssey, written, of course, by Paul McCusker. What happens in this episode, Victoria?
Matthew talks to Whit and his dad about Miss Adelaide in the essay. He talks to them separately, of course. Detective Pullhouse talks to Buck, Eugene, and Katrina. And Buck tells Pullhouse that he should go look into Vance King without giving Pullhouse anything specific. Buck talks to Camilla and kind of destroys all her hopes of being like a jail convict, circus runaway, or whatever the heck she wanted to be. I have no idea.
Something like that.
And Wooton, Penny, and Hadley search for the perilous pen.
Yes.
Hadley's involved because apparently he isn't the pen. I'm not sure if I believe that.
Okay, so yeah, that's
you know what I actually thought of?
What?
Like when, you know how on Skype when we message each other or something like that, and then you just type like one letter or something like that, and it says that the other person's typing something, even if they're not typing anything at the moment.
Oh, that's
like they could just like type one letter, and the same thing on Facebook too, and then they could leave for an hour, and it would still say that they're typing.
That is true. That's a
what
really good point. Yeah, because
like, that was the first thing I thought of. I was thinking, like, just because Hadley is here doesn't mean that he's not typing. He's scatterbrained. He could have forgot to hit the send button because he's Hadley.
That's a really good point. I honestly don't know why I didn't think of that. I mean, there are some other things. My first thought, I mean, as soon as I heard HB and Odyssey, well, I'm like, well, obviously I have to make a joke about, like, who else it could be. So I'm like, it could be Hank Bonzel, who's one of Tom's friends who was on the city council.
No.
Maybe he still is. He appeared in 2 Darkness Before Dawn episodes, and Tom mentioned him in the Homecoming. So that's a possibility.
Hank, that evil sociopath.
Yeah.
Hank, I knew it was you.
He was the one who comes to Tom, and he's like, I'm sorry, Tom, but you were voted out for the recall and stuff. So who knows?
I never completely liked Hank.
He holds political power, so he'd be the perfect person for, Mr. Schwartz to grab up in his talons, right? Right?
Speaking of Mr. Schwartz, by the end of this episode, I had 2 thoughts. One, he still hasn't shown up.
Or been mentioned again, except for in one episode. That's what I was thinking too earlier today. Yeah. He's only been mentioned once ever.
And also, something else I realized at the end of the episode, we still have no idea what the heck Vance and Jules are doing.
Yeah, I know. Like, this is the end of part 12.
I mean, like, no wonder AIO needed more episodes in this album. If we ended right here, we still wouldn't have the complete story.
We wouldn't even have, like, half the story. I feel like we still don't know anything.
If the album actually ended here?
And then they waited, and imagine with Novacom, how it's like, you reach the end of album 37, and you actually have to wait, like, 6 months for, to find out how all the cliffhangers go. All these new sagas happen within the span of one album at least. But yeah, I was thinking the same thing, but I also remembered, like, I'm pretty sure Mr. Grote was only mentioned in probably 2 episodes, maybe 3 in passing of the Green Ring Conspiracy.
Still, like, Green Ring Conspiracy had a follow-up. We
Yeah,
don't
and this
know
will
if
probably have
this one's gonna have a
follow-up.
follow-up.
No saga has ever not
Well, I mean,
had
like, it
follow-up
probably
episodes.
will, but
Yeah, I know. But
you know what I mean.
yeah, so anyways, back to HB and Odyssey. So Hadley comes upstairs. So I'm like, so like you said, Hadley could have just typed something and not sent it yet. Or Hadley could have someone typing for him. Maybe it really is Councilman Bonsall. And here's, I mean, there are some other things.
No, it's not. What if someone's impersonating Hadley?
That's a possibility.
Or trying to frame him or something.
It's...
What if
Hadley,
Penny is the perilous
Victoria.
Pen and she's trying to frame Hadley?
Yes, that would make sense. Hadley would have had an account on the website before he came to Odyssey. So if that's his original username, it wouldn't make sense for him to say HB in Odyssey. It would be like HB in Alaska or whatever town he lives in. And I really don't see why on earth he would change his username upon visiting Odyssey, because that would just make things even more conspicuous. It makes more sense for HB in Odyssey to be someone who is, you know, like a more permanent resident of the town. Don't you think?
What if, like, Vance is trying to frame Hadley?
Well, I think if he was, he'd probably be a little more obvious about it. Plus, I don't know what that would have to do with anything.
Well, you suspected Hadley in episode 1, so clearly it's going pretty well.
That's true. Alternatively, it could be Hassan Ben Sober, who is that Middle East consultant guy on OT Action News team in Siege of Jericho. Or it could be Helen
of course.
It could be Helen Blakely, who's the mother of Brock Blakely from Another Man's Shoes. Or it could be, it's probably not Henry Ward Beecher, who is the most famous preacher in all of these United States. At least he was in the late 1800s. That's what I was doing on AIOO Wiki when you were you were waiting to start. I was looking up all of the other people on Odyssey who've ever been on who have the initials HB.
I realized
that. So, Captain Absolutely's computer room was inspired by Wit's secret computer room. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was interesting.
It's really weird how much looser Wit is about letting people know that it exists when you think about the fact that in Album 5, Eugene was fired solely for letting Connie find out that the computer room existed, right? Like, Eugene's firing didn't have anything to do with applesauce, because that was all on Connie. The reason Eugene was fired was solely for the fact that he let Connie find out about the computer room. And now it's just
I think that after
Donna
my
found
theory
out.
is after Donna found out,
That's what I thought.
Like, I give up, and then
everyone knows obviously now. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Donison probably mumbled it in her sleep or something. Ferguson heard, and that darn cat probably told everyone.
He came back the very next day.
Very next day.
I think the most interesting takeaway from this episode is the fact that Wit has Wit has met the president. I thought,
yeah.
And they just kind of like, you know, kind of throwaway line, but I was like, that's actually really interesting. Like, first off, I wonder which one, like, which president and when it was both, like in Wit's life. Like, was it when he was an agent for the Department of Defense, as a contractor, as a businessman? Is it more recent? Why did he meet the president? I feel like there were a lot of questions created by that line, and none of them are ever going to be answered. What do you think?
Dev.
Yeah.
You know what line also created a lot of questions?
Is it the hand
The
up?
one where they mentioned hand up. Yeah.
Yeah. Good way to segue into that, because we haven't mentioned it in a whole episode.
I know. I was thinking about it. I was ashamed of myself.
I'm sure you were.
Anyway. So now I'm perplexed. Who is the pen? And you were also right about Buck and the milkshakes, because there is a whole lineup of girls outside trying to offer drinks to Buck. I later found out when Camilla brought him a drink that all the drinks, at least Camilla's, which leads me to assume that all of them, because why not, were lemonade. And you have no idea how happy that makes me.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so perfect.
So, Wit is up and at 'em again, back at Wit's End. It's funny because I listened to Best Intentions earlier today. So I think between those two episodes, I think that Wit's doctors really need to get, like, some handcuffs to force him to rest whenever something happens to him.
I put poor Dr. Graham because, like, poor Dr. Graham, because she's just like,
with Monty,
I need you to listen to me. And then Monty's just like, I don't care. And then he, like, jumps out the window, parkour style or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he, like, collapses at Wit's house. And then, like, Dr. Graham has to do a house call. And she's just like, oh, these darn Whitakers.
I know,
then,
right?
Like,
he breaks through the door and just collapses
like,
in a pile of broken glass. And she puts up with so much.
Yeah, and it's just like, geez, Monty, no.
To be fair, after what she put Jeff through...
No. Like, no, we don't say bad things about Jeff. That's rule number 2.
No, I'm saying bad things about her. I still can't believe it. He's like, I really don't think it's safe to land, and you guys are in this plane. And she's a doctor. She's like, hey, it's fine. I believe in you. But yeah, I know.
Maybe it's because she ships Connie and Jeff, and Connie's basically a Whittaker. So she's just like, Jeff's going to be a Whittaker one day, so I'm getting early vengeance for when Jeff ends up in the hospital.
Yeah, that's it.
And anyway, so, but like, then Jason, he's just like, I'm in the hospital, and Dr. Graham's just like, stay here. And he's just like, I don't care. And then he jumps through Wit's window too. And then Wit's just, like, in the hospital multiple times.
Jason was never in the hospital.
And, well, I'm pretty sure he had something to do with Dr. Graham. I don't know.
No.
I don't know. He might as well have.
He did the same thing.
A combination between Wit and Monty.
He did break into Wit's house in the exact same way, but it didn't have anything to do with the hospital.
Are you sure Jason didn't go to the hospital?
Yes, because nobody knew that he was involved with the Green Ring conspiracy except for Wit.
Okay, if he did go to the hospital, Dr. Graham would have been like, Jason, no! And he would have been like, Jason, yes! And then he would have left. And then Wit does this like 1 billion times. Poor Dr. Graham. No one ever listens to her.
Yeah, Wit's need for productivity constantly is literally the same as Monty Ohm's. When I was reading all the stuff about Monty, talking about like how he worked all the time and couldn't stop working, and he was always like, I just need to get all these ideas and these activities out of me all the time. I can't stop working. It made me think of Wit. So, yeah.
Protected parent Eugene. Oh my gosh. It just got better in this episode.
Oh,
they're just like, Eugene, code 44. Pullhouse is talking to Buck. And he's just like, my son. And then he just like bolts out of the computer room. And then
leaves
he just
Hadley
like
there.
Stands in front of Buck, and he's just like arms spread, and he's just like, Pullhouse, you'll have to take me first and stuff before I let you touch my child.
Yeah, I loved his line about how complicated life gets when you add teenagers into the equation. And when he runs out and he's like yelling at Hadley not to touch anything, like I was thinking like Hadley alone in the computer room, like it's a good thing that applesauce isn't on Mabel anymore. With Hadley in there. Hadley probably would have accidentally, in his panicked flurry, said the password to level 2.
Oh my gosh, that would have been terrible.
It would have been terrible.
I don't even want to think about what that would imply after. So, like, but he got, like, upset, and he's talking about leaving, and honestly, if he leaves at the end of this album, I'm going to be so sad.
Why would he leave?
What?
What possible reason would he leave for?
I don't know, he just seemed really upset about, like, everyone judging him and stuff. I'm like, if he gets upset and then he tries to leave or something like that, it's gonna be really sad.
Well, I mean, he can't leave legally. So.
Yeah, I know, legally, but, like, if he sneaks off or something.
Well, I know, I'm just saying he couldn't do that permanently because he's still on, like, parole halfway house stuff right now, right? So he would be like an escaped convict still, or Valjean levelness at least. He would
I
break
like to
parole or
think
whatever it is for juvies.
I like to think when Buck is like sleeping in the middle of the night and then like or he like can't sleep or something like that, or he's having a rough night's sleep or something, Eugene just comes in with his ukulele and he just like strums music in the corner, and he like gives Buck an extra blanket and stuff and just like gets a cup of water and just I need this to be a thing.
Just think, once the ties that bind calm down, we'll be able to get slice of life episodes with the Meltzner family.
I know.
I just realized that right now, and
and
I'm really excited now.
No, but like, just imagine, what was that episode called? The one where Eugene and Katrina were like babysitting
the
those
child one. What's the new? Of 55 is to do them. Where's Child's Play? That's it. I knew it had the word child in it.
Imagine if you got rid of like the boy in that one and you replaced him with Buck, and it's just like Eugene and Buck like throwing baseballs in the backyard, and it's just like, oh, I had a hard day and stuff, and then they're just hanging out. It's like the most adorable thing ever.
Oh, you're gonna kill me. Okay. So Matthew talks to Whit, and Whit has another talk, and I really want to point out that throughout this entire album so far, I don't know, I mean, like I said, there was some... The problem is everything is so vague when they talk about gender stuff, and it makes it really confusing. But it seems like when they talk about transgenderness, I'm under the impression that they are under the impression that trans people choose to change genders, which is not at all true. They don't believe it's a choice. They believe that that's the gender they were born, and that their bodies just don't properly reflect who they are for whatever reason. And regardless of your opinion on the matter, of whether or not you think that's true, the series does seem to be misrepresenting it as if trans people believe that they're choosing to switch genders. Like, some people still think that people choose their sexuality off a menu. Like, there's still people who think like, oh, well, they just chose to be gay. Why don't you choose to be straight? Like, it seems like that's what they are acting like trans people think, which is extremely not true. So I'm not sure if it's an oversight on Paul's part, or if he just wasn't well informed enough about the issue, and so he made that error in his writing. But yeah, and overall still, all the gender talk, it still doesn't sit right with me, because the way that they talk about it is still so vague enough that I'm really worried that kids are going to take it to mean not talking about like gender identity, but gender roles, and that they're going to think that Whit is encouraging reinforcing classical gender stereotypes, which obviously can be very harmful and is against things that this show has said in the past. And I know that that's not what the show is trying to say, or at least I'm 95% sure, because they're so vague about it, but I'm worried that impressionable kids are going to take it that way, and it's going to be one of those things that like reinforces like toxic masculinity, and the idea like guys have to be strong and can't cry and need to like monster trucks and steak and bacon, because what's like, you know, don't confuse our ideas of masculinity and femininity. And I know when he means that, he's talking about like which gender you identify as, but using the words masculinity and femininity, those words don't necessarily mean male and female. Those are more associated with like the classical ideas of like guys can't like pink and they can't cry, and girls can't do science or be smart or tough or things like that, which are not true and are harmful to society. And I know that that's not what it's reinforcing, but I'm just worried that that's how kids are going to take it. So I wish that it could be more transparent in that respect. Yeah. And the final note, it seems like on the note of the Perilous Pen and Maximize Comics owning the domain for the Perilous Pen website, and I really like the fact that Wooton actually walked through the steps that he took to figure it out. That was neat. it also makes me feel a lot better about how far I've come computer-wise over the years, that now, before it was like, oh, I'm learning all these computer things from Adventures in Odyssey, and now it's like, ooh, Eugene is saying these things that I already understand. So, but it seems like it would be really bad business for the world's largest comic book publisher to leak their own secrets to their own IPs, unless it's like an Alex Hirsch thing, like we talked about last night. What do you think?
I don't know.
About any of that? Any comments anywhere?
Are Vance and Jules perilous pens?
I don't think that it's related to whatever they're doing. They're doing something in order to make money.
I want to know what they're doing.
I know. There
yet.
must be a lot that's going to happen in these last 2 episodes, because none of these plot lines, not only have none of these plot lines like been tied up yet, but they're also all barely even tied to each other, like just by the loosest thread. So, I mean, I know there's supposed to be some sort of battle for the heart of Odyssey, and I feel like we're really missing out on like something big happening here. Yeah, it must be a busy last 2 parts to wrap all this up. I feel like we're still like a third of the way up the rising action for this arc when we should be at the climax. You know what I mean?
Like, I personally think that they should have split this storyline into
2 albums.
2 albums. Like, it wouldn't be talking about this the whole time. It'd be kind of like what they did with Novacom.
Yeah.
But, like, there would be filler episodes without being filler episodes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they'd still be filler episodes, but they wouldn't really
They could have
feel like it.
self-contained plots, yeah.
Yeah, because they would slightly still match the tone. Like, we could have 5 episodes about what's going on, and then we could have an episode about Buck just kind of readjusting at like home life with Eugene and Katrina, and then we could have like another 5 episodes, and then we could have something else. We could have a whole episode explaining, like that way we could have had a whole episode explaining everything with Randall. Was that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really wish that we got more with him and stuff.
And I'm still really hoping that we do in the
and we
like
also
very
could have
minimal
gotten the
time we
whole
have
Room
left.
of Consequence adventure.
True.
What
Yeah,
did you
it would have
say?
been nice if there was more episodes, even if the plot itself had nothing to do with this stuff, but at least, you know, there's mention and little stuff like that of the other plot lines that were going on. I love it when, you know, we get a more arcing general feel for stuff like this, because, you know, like that's what Novacom did, and that's one of the strengths of it. And the Blackheart saga too, that was spread out over so long. The hallmark of it is the fact that the episodes between, you know, the Applesauce saga and Darkness Before Dawn, the things in between that are technically part of the Blackheart saga, like One Bad Apple, Wrathbone of Contention, stuff like that, you wouldn't even know that they're related, because, you know, the stuff that was tying in and foreshadowing and stuff was in there, but it wasn't like the whole episode is about Blackheart, which is honestly why I dislike, and I don't know how they could fix it really, but the fact that, you know, with the Blackheart Saga album, it has that stuff in it, and I think that kind of ruins it, because if you listen to that for the first time through that album and those episodes, then you would know that that stuff is going to be related to Blackheart in some way, which is not how it is meant to be digested narratively. You're not supposed to know. It's the same thing with the first couple episodes of Novacom, right? Even the first 2 episodes, when you have Opportunity Knocks and then Red Herring, you're not supposed to know, or Nova Rising, sorry, you're not supposed to know that those episodes are connected, that Novacom having a tower and the kids seeing Eugene at Campbell College sneaking around are related in any way, and then slowly these things are suddenly, oh, it's a big conspiracy. Which is also something that's lost out on albums like 53 and 58, where all of the episodes have the same name, and it's just one big 14-part episode. instead of a whole bunch of individual and 2 and 3 part episodes.
So do you agree with me that it should have been 2 albums?
I think that would have been nice, yeah. And it would also mean that, because the problem with the way they release stuff nowadays, and I'm sure we'll have an episode discussing it one day, because I just could talk about it forever. I really wish that they would just not release any of the episodes until they come out on the radio. Because nowadays, it's like the album begins airing on the radio in September. You can start buying the album in August. You can digitally download it in like June, and you can hear it on the OAC in May. So some people have finished listening to the entire album 5 months before it even starts airing on the radio, which means, then you have, if you want to listen to it on the radio, like we do, you have to avoid spoilers for like half a year now. It gets worse and worse with every single album, the time between airing on the radio and when they let people start listening to all the episodes. So at least if it was split into 2 albums, there would actually be a unity point where at the end of the first part, everyone would be in the same spot, and we'd all be able to, talk about predictions, and everyone would be in the same spot and not know what happens after that. And that would be nice. It would be like the old-fashioned days when Novacom, before my time, but people could actually discuss what they thought was going to happen, and everyone was in the same place at the same time. That kind of ruins the community aspect of the discussion in the fandom. And Brendan McFarlane sends me messages on Facebook teasing me about sending me spoilers. So, anyways, final thoughts on this episode, Victoria?
I still have lots to say.
In
my notes.
Sorry, please go ahead. I thought you already said all your notes.
So, like, when Buck was talking to Camilla, and he's just like, you have a family. You have a family. I wish I could have a family.
Thanks,
and
Applejack.
I was like, oh, Buck, you do have a family. Your parents are literally the show's OTP. Like, you could not get a better family than overprotective dad and smart, awesome mom. Like, not that overprotective dad isn't smart. I'm going to start calling Eugene and Katrina overprotective dad and smart mom. What do you think?
Smart mom sounds like smart mop to me, but you can do that.
I'll call her awesome mom. And I put true he can, but just a heads up, it'll take a whole episode to do so. I'm not sure what that was in reference to. But
what did you say?
It was something while Buck was talking.
No, but what were the words that you said?
True he can, but just a heads up, it'll take a whole episode to do so.
See, I've learned a long time ago, not if I'm going to leave a vague note about something, put in brackets what on earth you're talking about, because when you record the review, you're not going to remember what it's in reference to.
It was either that or something about the perilous pen.
Well, thank you, Victoria. You just covered 75% of the episode.
You're welcome. Eugene made an Oklahoma reference. It was amazing.
What was it?
It just cements his musical knowledge, which I appreciate so much. I knew you wouldn't get it because you don't know anything about Oklahoma.
Do you know how many years it's been since I saw Oklahoma? A lot.
It's been years for me too, but I actually listened to the music.
Yeah, I know. I've been listening to the soundtrack, so
Mom.
I've only seen the musical Rosalind Light Opera, and yeah, that was like 15 years ago. Not that long. But.
So they're talking about I'm like so cultured, and you're an uncultured swine.
That's exactly it.
So like. They're talking about how the perilous pen is in
Kansas City. I was wondering because they said it. They said Kansas City multiple times. I'm like, I feel like there's some kind of joke in here.
And then Eugene says, "Yes, everything's up to date in Kansas City." And I just heard that, and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh!"
Yeah.
Yes, because Kansas City is my second favorite Oklahoma song, and I sing it all the time.
When he said that line, I was like, that sounds like it's a reference to something. I love that song so much. So
we have everything's up to date in Kansas City, and the rain in Spain falls mainly in the plain. We have 2 points for Eugene. the most cultured one of us all next to
Well,
me because I get all his references.
I could have told you that Eugene was a fan of Oklahoma because he says in a class act, which I listened to just a couple of hours ago, and I don't even remember hearing it because I was sorting peas, but I just know that line by heart, where Eugene's like talking about the Harlequin Dinner Theater. He's like, I especially appreciated their production of Oklahoma. It was such a creative directorial choice to set it in Alaska. So it was already canonical that Eugene is an Oklahoma fan. So continuity.
I know it's canonical.
Well, I know
it's canonical that he's like a huge musical buff and stuff like that. But I just wanted to point that out because he's awesome.
Thank you for
points to Paul for doing that because he rocks. I put, D. Grant sure hasn't shown up in a while.
Hello?
You know who else hasn't shown up in a while?
Hello?
Like Jules or Mr. Schwartz or like
I didn't hear you for 10 seconds there.
I'm basically saying that no one who is menacing except for Miss Adelaide has shown up.
That is true. And D. Grant a little bit.
Slightly, but she hasn't shown up in a while. That's what I'm getting
That's true.
To. And Mr. Schwartz, like, where is he? And he's going to show up.
I know, but like I said, Mr. Grote never showed up. The chairman only showed up in the last episode.
He's going to show up in the last episode, and you know what's going to happen? There's going to be little kids who are listening to this, and then they're going to be like, Mr. Schwartz, oh my gosh, like in the episode. And then the little kids are going to be like, who the heck is this? Like,
we're going to be like, who the heck is this? We don't know what he sounds like.
Like, he's like the ghost town. He's just like an anomaly that makes no sense whatsoever. And I'd rather ignore, but you know what? I'd actually rather not ignore it as like the ghost town.
Of course not.
Like, it's important, but the show's just like, I'm gonna go Victoria Ghost Town on Mr. Schwartz, and we're just gonna ignore him.
Victoria, we're going very overtime again, and we already did on the first part, so we should really talk about our final thoughts.
Anyway, you talk now.
Okay, I really don't have a lot to say about this episode. It focused really heavily on Buck and the Perilous Pen, which I like.
Buck was amazing in this episode with Camilla. I'm proud of him.
Yes, I mean, obviously, like, you know, Connie or Katrina or someone coached him to say that stuff, but he did it very well, and it was very sweet that he did that. I really liked everything with Buck in here. It was nice that we're finally getting somewhere substantial with the Perilous Pen for the first time in the last 12 episodes, aka this entire saga, finally. I already talked about my thoughts on the gender stuff. I really don't have a lot to say about this episode. It was, it's mostly a filler one moving towards the end, and I really still feel confused because it feels like we should be feeling a bit more climactic around now. But it still feels like we're right in the middle of the album plot-wise in terms of like plot structure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So between this one and the last one, which was last night, and that was all that stuff, Miss Adelaide's brother, my long rant about gender, blah, blah, blah.
My rant about Miss Adelaide.
Yeah, between the two of these.
Stuff about the zombies and Jay.
These two last ones, 4 out of 5.
I liked them.
3.9 out of 5.
They're
good, but it's just not really anything special about the last two that I can think of at this very moment.
I would say this episode that we're reviewing right now. If you want to just like listen to the episodes without having to listen to all of them, like say you've already heard all of them before so you know what happens, but you want to re-listen to all of them, but you don't have enough time to listen to every single episode, I'd say this one is probably skippable. The one before this is not, however. Let me think. Overprotective Dad gets a lot of points in my book because that was awesome. And it just keeps on getting better. How overprotective and spazzy Eugene is. It's amazing. Buck was great in these last two parts. Connie didn't really do anything. And we're finally starting to get somewhere with Hadley. And
finally. And they even acknowledged, like, he still could have set the fire and he could have, pretended to harm himself. So,
I like how they talked about the timer thing, which
Yeah,
you brought up.
which
so
I
you get a
said.
point for that. Actually, you get a point.
Yeah, but I feel like overall we're still losing because the fact that they're bringing these things up is just reinforcing the idea that Hadley isn't actually the perilous pen.
So you're at 3 points and I'm at 8 points.
Yeah. What's your rating for these two?
Oh gosh. I'm gonna say 4.5 out of 5.
All right.
Because, yeah.
So, Victoria, in case our audience can't guess, what are we going to talk about next time?
Is it these?
Yeah.
Or is it Very Best of Friends?
No, it's the ties that bind.
Okay.
Parts
The ties
13
that
and
bind.
14.
Part 13 and part finale.
And of course, we'll also be doing our overall review of the entire season as a whole, all 14 parts. So that means I'm going to have to listen to the entire album again. Which will be nice because it'll help me give overall perspective on everything.
That's going to be a separate video, though, the overall review, right?
No, they're always... The album reviews are always the same part as the last episode. Because it's just a very brief, just kind of like final thoughts about how they all connected together and stuff. Just like we did for album 57.
I can't remember. That was too long ago.
It was a long time ago, yes.
Anyway, I have been not Devin Francis.
Nor have I been Victoria. And until next time, this will still not be.
This will not be the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.
Yeah, I was trying to make a less awkward double negative, and it just became so much more awkward. Goodbye.
That's why you leave it to me. Bye.